Hi there, folks. In this video, we're going to learn how to graph sine and cosine on a coordinate plane in radians. Okay? There are several steps to remember in order to help us do this successfully and with ease. You follow these steps, it's not going to be that bad. Okay? So here we go. So the first step is, if there's a number in front of theta, you need to factor it out. So, for instance, if this is our equation, you would want to factor out the b from just what's inside the parentheses. Okay, I will show you how to do that and do that with ease. Okay, step 2, the amplitude is the positive of the number in front of the trig function. Okay, so in this case, the amplitude would be a. Even if that number is negative, you're going to take the positive version of that number for the amplitude. That's just going to stretch the graph. Okay, if it is negative, okay, it's just going to flip the graph. So what that means is, if it's cosine, it's going to start at -1. If it's sine, instead of going up, it's going to curve down. Okay. For step 4, we need to determine the period. Okay, that is how quickly the graph will repeat itself. So that, okay, you're going to take 2 pi divided by the number in front of theta. In this case, it would be 2 pi divided by b. Leave it as a fraction. Okay? Step 5, you have to determine the phase shift. Okay? So this is just like anything else. You know, you look at what's in the parentheses and you're going to move opposite the sign. But this is after you have already factored. Okay? Step 6, we need to determine the vertical shift. Okay, just like always, that is what is being added or subtracted outside the parentheses. And lastly, step 7, and this one's actually pretty important. This is the one that's going to make our life really easy or not so easy. Okay? That's to determine a scale. Okay? The scale is going to be the period, so what you found in step 4, divided by 4. All right, so each of these you're going to find on the side of the graphs that you look at. So turn to this page in your packet. It should be right after the other ones that you've done. Now, in this problem here, you will see that we've already factored out the 2 for you. That makes life very easy for us. So, over here, A is for amplitude, P is for period, PS is the phase shift, VS is the vertical shift, and then I am going to add another line down here for the scale. It's going to make life very easy. Okay, and that's how I'm going to label each of these lines. Now, I'm going to have 2 different colors here. I'm going to have a colored pencil, and I'm going to have my pen. Hopefully, they're both going to show up very well in the video. Okay, so the amplitude, that's the number in front of the trig function. So in this case, the amplitude is 3. That means from wherever our midline is, the graph is going to go 3 up and 3 down at its highest and lowest points. Okay? Then we got the period. To find the period, we're going to take the number in front of theta, so in this case 2, and we're going to do 2 pi divided by that number. So 2 pi divided by 2, so that's pi. All right? Our phase shift, okay, we can look at it, since that's already factored out, I can look at it and say, because that's minus, it's going to go to the right, and it's pi over 2 spaces. So, right, pi over 2. Vertical shift, that says +4, so I'm going to go up 4. Now to determine the scale. This is the most important part. Okay, I'm going to take the period, and and I'm going to divide that by 4. So my scale is going to go by pi over 4. Okay? So, here we go. So I'm just going to label these. And I'm going to go by pi over 4s here. Okay? So, pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, whoops, 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4, 8 pi over 4. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, hey, I can reduce those, can I? And sure you can. Okay? 2 pi over 4 is the same thing as pi over 2. 4 pi over 4 is the same thing as pi. 6 pi over 4 is the same thing as 3 pi over 2. 8 pi over 4 is the same thing as 2 pi. Okay? I just find that going by individual units, it makes things easier. Okay? So now going the other direction, it's just negative. Negative pi over 4. I'm going to make life a little bit easier here. So this is negative 2 pi over 4. So, okay, negative 3 pi over 4. Negative 4 pi over 4. Anyways, you get the idea. And again, we can reduce these if we really wanted to. So now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to work on graphing them. Okay, so here we go. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to graph the non-shifted graph. Okay, and I'm going to, for me, on this one, I'm going to do that in pen. Okay, so this is sine. I know that sine starts at 0. Okay, so I know it's going to start here. I know the amplitude is 3. So, and because of how I've set the scale, each line is how far it's either going to go up to the top of its amplitude, back to the midline, or to the bottom of the amplitude. That's why this scale is so important. So, sine starts at 0. It's going to go up to the top of its amplitude at 3, back down to the midline, then down 3, midline, and you see this pattern. And just continue this pattern across the graph. Now, I just did it along the positive side. I have to do it along the negative as well. And now I'm going to draw this in. Again, don't worry how smooth it looks, okay? As long as it, isn't a zigzag, you're okay. It just needs to be flowing, okay? So, now, notice that I'm doing mine in pieces. Okay, that seems to work for me. Okay, and that is our parent graph with the amplitude and the period. Now, I'm going to actually shift this graph. Okay, so, here we go. I'm going to take my point here, and the vertical shift is right pi over 2. Hey, look, there's pi over 2. So that's 2 lines. Okay? So this point here goes right 2, and then up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Now you need to plot a complete rotation to get a good idea. So notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get a whole rotation here. So this point here, right 2, then up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This point, right 2, 1, 2, up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now this point, right 2, 1, 2, up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this last point, right 2, 1, 2, up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now that I have that, now I can see the pattern that's going on here. Okay, so again, this is up 3 from this center line. And now it's easy for me to see this center line because it's shifted up 4 just like this is. Okay, so, and I recommend people draw that in. Okay, so here we go. So now I'm just going to continue that pattern now that I know what's going on. And then I have to do it the other direction as well. Okay. And then I'm just going to connect these now. Okay, so this is my original graph. This is my finished graph with transformations. Okay, you should have 2 graphs on your axes, on your grid, for each and every one of these. Now that's a sine graph. On this next one, in number 2, this is a cosine graph. We have multiple things going on here. Okay. But one thing that we don't have going on here, if you look at it, is there's nothing being added or subtracted on the outside. So this one does not have a vertical shift. Okay, I will point out that with this one, okay, that midline is moved the same as the vertical shift. So if you wanted to draw that in at the very beginning, you certainly could. I kind of recommend it, actually. All right, so I'm going to do number 2 and number 3. Okay. So, in number 2, okay, what we have here is we have a number in front of pi. That's a no-no. So we have to factor that out. So that means I'm going to take pi out of the parentheses. So, now it does not come out from inside of the cosine. It's still there. But it just goes in front of the parentheses. I took away pi from the theta, so now it's just theta. I took away the pi from the pi over 2, so now it's just 1/2. It keeps the sign. So now I'm ready to answer these questions, including the question that's not there, scale. Okay, scale should be, again, you'll need to write that in. You want to write that in. Okay, looking at this, my amplitude, 4, because that's the number in front of the cosine. It's up to me to remember that there's a reflection here. So I'm even going to write amplitude 4. I'm going to say reflected for a mental note for me. The period, okay, remember, period is 2 pi divided by the number in front of theta. In this case, that number is pi. So 2 pi divided by pi, so the period is 2. Okay, phase shift, opposite the sign, so since that's plus 1/2, that means I'm going to go left 1/2. Vertical shift,